This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. My name is Evidence. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park every morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today we look back at yet another chaotic week in the South African Parliament, where protests and unruly behaviour in the House now seems the order of the day. A landmark ruling last week saw a small little victory for the consumer here in South Africa. We'll delve into that. We'll also look at the launch of the Tshwane bus service, the Divani trial, and we'll get an update on Soweto Fashion Week, an event that's causing quite a stir. But first, let's get today's news from Katrine Miller.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malan, and let's take a look at those top stories this morning. Commuters across Gauteng have been left stranded this morning as taxi operators embarked on a strike in the province. Many say they were not notified about the strike and couldn't arrange alternative transport to get to work. The reason for the strike is not known at this stage, and it's also not known when the taxis will be running again. The Gauteng Education Department has urged parents of matric pupils who are unable to get to school for exams to inform the schools. President Jacob Zuma has conveyed his condolences to the families of South Africans who were killed when a church guesthouse collapsed in Lagos, Nigeria 2 months ago. The remains of 74 victims arrived from Nigeria yesterday and were handed over to the families at a repatriation ceremony at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. They have been taken to various mortuaries in the country. The remains of 11 people must still be identified. A total of 116 people were killed in the tragedy.
The collective thoughts and prayers of the entire nation reach out to the bereaved families as you prepare to lay to rest the remains of your beloved ones in various parts of our country.
Mali is on high alert after 3 confirmed Ebola deaths in the capital Bamako. Mali had been spared from the outbreak that's killed more than 5,000 people across West Africa, despite sharing a border with Guinea, where the epidemic began. But now health authorities are desperately trying to trace more than 400 people who came into contact with confirmed and probable Ebola patients. G20 leaders have promised to provide better living standards and quality jobs for people across the world. They are also set on a goal of raising GDP by 2.1% by 2018 to add more than $2 trillion to the global economy. The 2-day G20 summit in Brisbane ended yesterday.
This year, the G20 has delivered real, practical outcomes, and because of the efforts that the G20 has made this year, culminating in the last 48 hours, people right around the world are going to be better off, and that's what it's all about.
And South Africa struck back to beat Australia by 3 wickets in the second one-day international at the WACA in Perth. The 5-match series is now levelled at 1-1. Meanwhile, paceman Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc have both been recalled to Australia's squad for the remaining 3 one-day internationals, while selectors give Mitchell Johnson a rest. Remember, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Thank you, Katrine. And we start with chaos in the House, in Parliament, that is. Now, the Economic Freedom Fighters has blamed the ANC for the chaos that erupted during a sitting in Parliament last week, which saw one of its MPs removed by police. The party has accused the ANC of using Parliament to obstruct accountability of a member of the executive. In this case, State President Jacob Zuma, who is, they say, constitutionally bound to account to Parliament on a regular basis. Opposition parties shouted down National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete when she tried to prevent them bringing dozens of motions. Most of these were related to spending on so-called security upgrades at the President's private Nkandla homestead in KwaZulu-Natal, which the public protector found to have benefited the President unduly. But National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete says Thursday's chaos in Parliament was bound to come, because some MPs have had the intention of destroying the institution. Now, to give us a sense of what has happened since that Fateful day in the National Assembly. Our very own reporter, Lokanyo Kalata, has invited a political analyst, in this case, Lawson Naidoo. Very good morning to you, Lokanyo. Please just set the scene for us and then proceed.
Eben, thanks very much. Yes, you've summed it up quite perfectly. I mean, last Thursday was once again very unprecedented in the life of the South African Parliament in the first 20 years of our democracy. And there was such a lot that was said and that happened. And then even on Friday, both parties then, the Speaker of Parliament and her deputy, as well as the other at least opposition parties in Parliament, all tried to explain and say, well, this is what happened, this is what happened. And I think it is at this time, even, that I just want to bring in our guest, Lawson Naidoo, to try and unpack to us exactly who's wrong and what was supposed to happen and what was not supposed to happen. Lawson, let me bring you in here at this time. Good morning.
Thank you.
On Friday, when the Speaker tried to explain, as well as the opposition parties tried to give their sides to the story, there was a lot of accusations. The DA accused the Speaker of Parliament accused the DA, the EFF accused the ANC. Exactly who's to blame, who's wrong, who's right here for what happened on Thursday?
I think, Lucanio, that all the parties are to blame. I think the finger-pointing is necessary to the extent that we need to have accountability for what took place in Parliament on Thursday. Those were disgraceful scenes of seeing armoured police enter the chamber of the National Assembly. And I think all parties must take responsibility for that. We need to understand exactly who gave the order for armed police to enter the sanctity of that chamber, and that needs to happen. But we also need to then move beyond that and say, how do we fix Parliament? Because Parliament is in crisis right now. It is a dysfunctional institution at this point in time. And there needs to be some serious introspection by all political parties to say, what is this institution supposed to do? It's there to serve the interests of you and me and the South African public, and to serve our concerns and aspirations, and it's not doing that at the moment.
In your opinion, what needs to happen to restore the values of robust debate, of consensus-seeking discussions? What needs to happen?
Well, I think this is a time for leadership, it's a time for cool heads, it's a time for wise counsel. And I think political parties and all the stakeholders in Parliament need to come together, sit around a table, the speakers, all the presiding officers, the leader of government business, and the whips of all the parties, and decide how this institution is going to function so that it can serve both its constitutional mandate and the needs that ordinary South Africans that have elected representatives to sit in this House, that it achieves that purpose. Oh. It's a time for leadership, it's a time for looking beyond narrow party political interests and putting the country first.
How do you think history will judge this moment in our Parliament?
Well, I think it's been a failure of leadership. I think, and that's why I say that everyone must take responsibility. Because it needs cool heads. It doesn't need the situation being exacerbated all the time, as it has been in recent times. Thursday's events were a culmination of a process of frustration, of Parliament not discharging its core constitutional mandate of holding the executive to account. That is what has led to the crisis, and we need to now get back and say, how does Parliament really fulfill its role?
Okay. The ordinary South African, you and me, should we be worried about recent events and the impact on our democracy?
I think we must be extremely concerned. If Parliament is unable to fulfill its constitutional function, then our very democracy is at stake. Because Parliament is there to hold the executive to account, it's there to be the conscience of the nation. And if it cannot fulfill that role, then South Africa is in a dire state indeed.
Let's look 15, 20 years down the line. How critical is this time?
Well, I think it's a time for us to step back and renew our commitment to the values and principles that are enshrined in our Constitution. We need to say, 20 years into our democracy, is this where we want to be? Are we strengthening or are we weakening the institutions of democracy in South Africa? And future generations will judge us on how we respond to this crisis.
All right. Mr. Lawson Naidoo, thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, well, there you have it. Lawson Naidoo, the Executive Secretary from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, talking to us a little bit about how critical this time is in our democracy and whether us as ordinary South Africans whether we should be concerned or not, and he believes that we should be, because what's happening in Parliament at this moment is not the ideal situation for us. Eben?
Lukhanyo, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, you see the inner workings and the wheels of Parliament turning. In these instances, how much is it the fact that we have so many new members of Parliament in Parliament, and that there might be some real lack of understanding of the rules that apply or should apply in the House?
Yeah, but I think the fact that we have over half of the members of this fifth Parliament are new, and there seems to be a general lack of understanding of the rules and, of course, how Parliament functions. I can tell you that, I mean, for me, when I came in here about 4 years ago now, it took me about 2 years just to get the understanding of exactly how Parliament functions. We've, as the Speaker pointed out on Friday, we haven't even had 6 months yet of this fifth Parliament. And I think that what's happening right now is that not only is there a general lack of understanding of the rules, but it's also those rules that are known that are just being completely violated and, you know, completely being disregarded. And that obviously contributes a lot, because Parliament functions on rules, and it functions very, very much on rules. So when those rules are being misunderstood, when those rules are being disregarded, I mean, then you get to this situation in which we currently find ourselves in. Eben.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Lukhanyo Talata, who is our parliamentary reporter, putting us into the picture in, well, what's been going on in Parliament. And there's been a lot going on. If you've been watching the parliamentary channel, it's been very entertaining last week, Thursday, Friday, and the numbers on that very channel has moved up in the right direction. But we move on and we come to the capital now. Pretoria's public transport system got a major overhaul with the launch of the Bus Rapid Transport project on Friday. The new Tshwane bus service, or TBS, tickets will be introduced in April next year, and new routes to unserviced areas, including Centurion and several townships, are due to be introduced by July of next year. The city of Johannesburg was the first to see the implementation of the Rea Vaya BRT system in Gauteng that was welcomed by sectors of the community public, but has received a lot of resistance from the taxi industry in particular. In June, the city of Tshwane signed a memorandum of agreement with representatives of the taxi industry to ensure the peaceful implementation of the Tshwane Rapid Transport, or Arieng Let's Go bus system. Now, from the taxi industry, we are joined from Pretoria this morning by Abner Tsebe. A very good morning to you, Mr. Tsebe. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners.
Mr. Tsebe, I'd like to ask you first, before we get into the discussion of what went on and what the status quo is at the moment, but we see this morning on a Monday, the whole of Gauteng is gridlocked. What is happening with the taxi strike in Gauteng today? Can you help us there?
No, the strike is arranged by UTAF. I think it was on a newspaper, Daily Sun, last week, Thursday. It's not our structure, it's UTAF. But obviously their demands, they've got their own demands, and we are just on a process of coming with a milestone in Pretoria. We are not party to that strike.
When commuters are being held ransom, as they are on this Monday morning, start of the week, it makes a real case for alternative transport systems like the one we saw launched last week to be in place. Would you agree with that?
Yes, exactly. But as I've said, you know, I think there are grievances. We, from our side, we've got our structure that is dealing with all the grievances of the taxi operators in Gauteng. That is Santaco. The Santaco president himself is dealing with all the queries relating to permits, our operating license issues, and other related operational issues. And so, hence I'm saying we are not party to that unless instructed. If there are any grievances, we'll get from our national structure.
Tell us, how do you view the launch of this bus transport system in the capital last week, and then extending this throughout the country?
Yes, this is one of the milestones. You remember that the motto for Tshwane is that ignites excellence. And us from the taxi industry, we perfect to the system of BRT systems in South Africa. So we want to be one of the best after Johannesburg, because we've learned from Johannesburg and we can't repeat the same mistakes. So hence we have a united front in Tshwane. All structures, we are together. We've got Topeka, which is an NTA affiliate, and the leadership of Ndate Mahlangu, who's the chairperson of Topeka, and myself under Greater Tshwane Regional Taxi Council, which is a Santaco Gauteng affiliate and also Santaco National affiliate. So we are dealing with this project together. We are holding hands because we want to move far.
Tell us a little bit about this project. How is the taxi industry involved in the bus rapid transport system? Is it ownership and then building this industry together going forward?
Yes, this system creates wealth for the taxi operator. In fact, the Tshwane municipality, the city manager and the mayor, they've alluded to us that this system will be owned by taxi operators as the previously disadvantaged, because we never operated with the subsidy. We were operating on our own, and now hence the city was saying this is purely for the taxi operators. And there's a company established which is called Tshwane Rapid Transit Property Limited, which is the operating company, the bus operating company, and the board of directors from both the taxi operators and the bus operators is represented in that structure. So that is a show of transformation from the municipality and government to say the taxi industry. Remember the minister once said, this Jeff Hadeb was saying, the taxi industry will be the yoke of this BRT systems in South Africa. And that action is happening really in Tshwane. The writing is on the wall.
The taxi industry is united. We're not going to see flare-ups around ownership and around sharing going forward in this space?
No, I don't think so. Flare-up, yes, you might have, incident there and there, but as United, we can't expect it to be just smooth. As of now, there's a situation in Mamelodi which no one knows where does it come. There are people killed. We've got Mr. Mauban, who was the secretary, was killed. Then we were told this morning there was another shooting yesterday. But you'd understand that in any transformation, there's a fear of the unknown. But hence, we are holding hands together and we are saying we are against these killings. But you can't relate it to BRT, because in BRT, our reporting system is fair and equal, and it addresses everybody. There's no other member, even those who are not affected are informed as to what is happening to those who are affected by the system.
Finally, Mr. Tebe, what's the message then to the general public? How is it going to make the life better for them?
This is the creation of wealth and legacy. For members out there, is that the TRT, as the bus operating companies, we've addressed issues of unemployment. And we are saying we are dealing with the redeployment process, which we are having already 45 drivers from the taxi industry who are the first drivers of the REM buses. And we are also saying to the community, for us to create a spiderweb economic doctrine, we need to be united so that everything that comes in does not get out, because the government is giving this wealth to the people of South Africa. So we are taking ownership as the taxi industry. And as much as the power is given to us, we are not, and I wanted to repeat that, we are not going to let anything come between us so that we can be able to prove to the world that South Africa indeed is in action of improving the public transport system with the departments and all the municipalities. Hence, our national structure was on this process of TR 2020 strategy that we need to redefine and find our way as to where are we heading to and where are we from. And we are also indeed saying to those who are not affected, there are opportunities that the city is coming up with, which is part of the value chain. They've given foresights to the taxi industry as a whole, not only the affected. And they are giving the station management to the affected as part of the value chain.
Yeah.
That shows very clearly that we need to take care of these things and be able to improve the lives of the taxi operators and the drivers at large.
Thank you very much for joining us. That's from the taxi industry, Mr. Abner Tsebe, joining us today. We're talking about well, their involvement in the new bus rapid transport project that was launched in the capital of South Africa on Friday. It deals with ownership and the way forward. Let's have a look quickly at your tweets. Gauteng Education says taxi strike. We ask parents to call and inform the school and make arrangements with the principal regarding exams. Yes, it will, definitely. SA Entrepreneurs, if you have a car, please think of your fellow neighbour who may be stranded due to the taxi strike. Offer a lift to work or school. Indeed, we do. Cliff says, saw no taxis during my run this morning and kept thinking, what are the chances the rapture happened and taxi drivers made it? Well, Cliff, then you would not have made it. Yes, you see someone, so you give someone a lift to work due to the taxi strike. Now I must wait for them because they're not ready, says Saki. Yes, no good deed will go unpunished, my friend. That's life. Luisa Twala says, in Gauteng, some call it a taxi strike, while others call it a leave day. Well, Luisa, it's not a leave day for us. We must continue with the work here on SABC Newsroom. Let's take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. What's been happening in the world? Well, the Australian Down Under is looking at the global growth promise the G20 summit focused on over the weekend there. You'll see the US head of state, Britain's Prime Minister and Japan's Prime Minister all smiling as they shook hands after closing the summit. Then in the United States, the Financial Times, yes, that's the pink paper, is reporting that Facebook is by far the preferred social network for the workplace with more than 1.3 billion users worldwide. Can you imagine that? And then in Europe, the Times has a picture of Andy Murray and John McEnroe giving each other a high five there at the ATP World Tour, currently being held at the O2 Arena in the United Kingdom, London to be specific. You're watching Newsroom. We will be back shortly. Don't go away. Have a seat. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I won't make fun of you for being a little bit late, all right? Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, some called it the victory of the little guy when mobile service provider Cell C's attempt to have a banner complaining about services one of its branches removed. It failed last week. The banner had been put up by an outraged customer after he received bad service. Now, Judge Sharice Wiener ruled the banner slamming the mobile phone operator could stay put after the more than 60,000 Rand banner bearing the Cell C logo was put up as a protest by businessman George Prokas on Beyers Naudé Drive here in Johannesburg. We now ask, what is the right of the consumer when, like in Prokas's case, service providers seem to be failing them? Now, to further this discussion, we are joined by the National Consumers Association Head of Legal Matters, Matlotse Tupalatlase. Very good morning to you, sir. You nearly got me there with your name this morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm okay, and you?
Let's start with your response to this ruling last week. It was a different but an important ruling, wasn't it?
It was an important ruling. It was a ruling that gave expression to, obviously, you know, the protecting the right of citizens, you know, to be able to express themselves. But it was also important from a consumer protection point of view. I suppose it was important in a sense that, you know, it's time that suppliers know and understand that consumers have got rights and they've got ways and means of expressing dissatisfaction with the service that they're being provided.
Services, the service in South Africa. Are we a nation that accepts bad service?
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately. And this is because for a long period of time in South Africa, we had a dispensation where the only reason for any supplier to comply with good service, if I may call it that way, was precisely that. It felt more like it's a favor. I'm doing you a favor, or I'm giving you a good service because I'm protecting my business interests, but not really as a matter of right for a consumer to get good service. But since the coming into effect of the Consumer Protection Act, I think businesses, and I may not come across, very good in the sense that businesses may not take this very well. But the fact of the matter is that the right of consumers for, in as far as good service is concerned, it's a right that's now entrenched in the Consumer Protection Act. It is no more a favor. It's legislated. It is a right.
Yes, but it's one thing for legislation to be passed. It's another for it to function and to be implemented properly. Do we see, has this become a positive experience here in South Africa since the Act has changed?
Well, the Act has not changed as such. It has been promulgated. It's a new Act. And I suppose the biggest challenge right now is really outreach, it's education to consumers to know and understand that they don't have to accept bad service. There are institutions, there are ombudsmen, there is the Commission. There has been obviously other, consumer protection agencies long before they come into effect of the Consumer Protection Act. There's been the National Credit Act, which is a consumer legislation. So the challenge right now is to reach out to as many consumers as possible and make them understand and educate them about their rights.
About their rights.
Yes.
I think we should also, you should also educate some of the business owners about their responsibilities that they have towards consumers, because sometimes it seems as if they are not aware of what they need to do, as was the case in Mr. Procas's case.
It is true. You take it for granted that big businesses with the power of money and everything that they have, one would expect them to be abreast of the entire legal and regulatory framework around the businesses that they do, around doing business in general. Yes. But it's been a difficult journey in terms of mindset change, for businesses as well, because you'd realize that some of the rights, most of the rights that are now legislated are rights that have just actually been there, in theory, and now they're in practice, they are legislated, yet businesses are really taking time to catch up, and wake up to the idea that, service, the level of service is legislated. A consumer has a right to good service.
And it's a non-negotiable. And I wanted to ask you quickly about this case that we see now. Mr. Do you believe that we're going to now see more little guys here in South Africa taking on big service providers and challenging them?
I suppose the biggest impact that this case would have, is for consumers businesses, suppliers of goods and services to understand that, you cannot just give a bad service and gag a consumer whenever he tries to go public with regards to the bad service that he has received. I think the biggest lesson will be that, as and when a consumer comes through to come and complain or ask for a service, he needs to be given attention as in there and there. Because, like in this case, a consumer will go out, put up a banner like that, you'll try to go to court, gag him, it may not succeed. So in this instance, it has failed. And the impact of the business has been much bigger than it would have had they actually tried to listen to these consumers at that time.
We live in the age of social media, and this is the real threat. This banner might have been seen by X amount of people on the road, but it's been seen by millions and millions of people and the entire country, really, because of social media. So there's a real risk to business owners who don't treat their clients well these days.
This has been, an awakening call. It has been a lesson. Because, you see, and I suppose that's the thing, that, little things do happen on shop floors, when a little transaction happens, a 5 cent, 10 cent, kind of a transaction happens, and consumers quite often leave, the shop floor or have a complaint about an after service, a poor after service that they get. But, and they're not taken seriously for the very reasons that it will only be that consumers who get affected. This case has demonstrated that there will be consumers out there who are actually able to go out into the public and say, this is what is happening. The impact, like I'm saying, will be much more bigger than if you had actually attended to them. So this has been a really great lesson. It's been I suppose we will not have dealt with it that way had it came to us as the Commission. We will have tried to facilitate, the amicable solution of this matter, between the consumer and the supplier. But the lesson is that if you don't attend to it, immediately it becomes as big as this, and you may not just be able to gag this consumer, go in public about the bad service or experience that he has.
Looks like we're finally going back to the era the customer is always right. Wanted to finally ask you, what is your advice then to frustrated and other consumers who are out there, despite the act being promulgated, as you say, there are still people out there who feel frustrated. What is your advice to them, and what sort of what sort of recourse do they have?
Well, from where I stand, obviously coming from an institution that deals with consumer protection, I can only advise them with regards to institutional mechanisms as far as redress is concerned. I wouldn't. I suppose even before this case, was heard in court, I wouldn't have said go out public because one would not know what the court will say. But I suppose what we can advise them is that there are channels, that are in place, that exist for consumers to be able to lodge their complaints. The National Consumer Commission is there. In this case, ICASA, I don't know what is it that he did in as far as taking it that far. But there are institutionalized redress mechanisms that have been put in place by various legislations to complain. This one is the extent to which an individual consumer can decide to take it to. Yes. But our advice is that we are there. Other institutions, that protects consumers' rights are there. You can lodge a complaint and attempt to have your issues dealt with there. Yeah.
Or you can just put up a banner if you have the money. Thank you for joining us today. Interesting case. It certainly changed the game here in South Africa, for not just for the consumers, but for big business and for business owners, because the reputational damage that your business can suffer on social media because of bad service at one of your outlets, as we've seen last week, can be immense. Thank you. The National Consumers Commission Head of Legal Matters, Mr. Andy Tupayatlase. Yeah, I got it right.
You got it right the second time around.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at your tweets. Remember, it's at SABC Newsroom. That's where you are. Apparently, Pastor TB Joshua couldn't make it because he receives instructions from heaven. Really? Really? Are you kidding me? Jacob Karabo says, the role our government played in this whole process is commendable indeed. Yes, it's been a long process and our government has managed it very well without incident. Sitole says, humanity at its best, thanks to the government of South Africa, giving credit where it is due. That is right. We mourn together. That is what we do in South Africa. Fundile Nyati says, SA Mourns 2014, all our provinces, with the exception of the Northern Cape, have lost their citizens in the Nigerian collapse. May their souls rest in peace. Well, let's take a look now at what's on Newsroom's Facebook page. Today, you will see there that closing arguments are expected to continue in the Randburg Magistrates Court in the inquest into a fatal crash involving President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane. Then you will see that COSATU's president, Stu Dlamini, has lashed out at affiliates that have suspended their participation in the Labour Federation's Central Executive Committee in solidarity with the expelled National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. And in the eastern Ukraine, local emergency services have recovered human remains, aircraft parts and personal belongings from the site where Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 crashed. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also visit our website, sabc.co.za/news, for all the very latest. It is Monday morning. Don't go away. We've got a little bit more. We've got an update from the Divani trial as well as Soweto Fashion Week after the break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
You can't have a gut feeling about other people's gut feeling.
Ngaba has continued the tradition of passing stories onto the next generation using a platform that offers stories to a far more greater audience.
Zombie no go unless you tell them to go.
This is what the audiences all over the world knew Fela Kuti for.
Join Musa Mkhalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Technology is all around us and is improving lives across Africa, like how young Nigerians are connecting to the internet. There are doctors finding new ways to save lives in Cameroon, and the South African public transport system that is now getting Wi-Fi. We have gadgets, apps and loads more, some of which play a big role in Africa's growth. A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation. To find out a bit more about social media and technology news from here in Africa and abroad, join me, Phumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back here with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just recap the morning's top stories. Commuters across Gauteng have been left stranded this morning as taxi operators embarked on a strike in the province. Many say they were not notified about the strike and couldn't arrange alternative transport to get to work. The reason for the strike is not yet known at this stage, and it's also not known when the taxis will be running again. The Gauteng Education Department has urged parents of matric pupils who are unable to get to school for exams to inform the schools. President Jacob Zuma has conveyed his condolences to the families of South Africans who were killed when a church guest house collapsed in Lagos, Nigeria 2 months ago. The remains of 74 victims arrived from Nigeria yesterday and were handed over to the families at a repatriation ceremony at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. They have been taken to various mortuaries in the country. The remains of 11 people must still be identified. A total of 116 people were killed in the tragedy. And Mali is on high alert after 3 confirmed Ebola deaths in the capital Bamako. Mali had been spared from the outbreak that's killed more than 5,000 people across West Africa, despite sharing a border with Guinea where the epidemic began. But now health authorities are desperately trying to trace more than 400 people who came into contact with confirmed and probable Ebola patients. Remember, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Yevon, over to you.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Now, the murder trial of British businessman Shrindavani continues in the Western Cape High Court today. Chief Forensic Analyst from Pretoria, Tandiwe Mhlabateki, testified about primer or gunshot residue last week. She'd conducted tests on the hijacked vehicle in which Annie Devani's body was found in Khayelitsha in November of 2010, as well as on a yellow glove found inside the car, the glove worn by one of the convicted hitmen. Zamadoro Kwabe was recovered 6 days after the murder. A piece of the glove tested positive for primer residue as well. Now, our reporter Vanessa Puna joins us live from the Western Cape High Court. She is with forensic expert Dr. David Klatsov today. Very good morning, Vanessa. Before you do the interview, just set the scene of the expectation of today.
Eben, yes, good morning to you. Last Friday, you rightfully say that we've seen the state's 16th witness, a forensic expert, testifying in the Western Cape High Court about primer residue found on the yellow kitchen glove worn by Mzwamadoda Kwabe, which he later on, a few days after the murder of Annie Devani, pointed out to police we had thrown it away in Khayelitsha. Now, this glove was sent away for testing for primer residue or gunshot residue. Interestingly enough, this evidence was not present during the trial of Xolile Mngeni, the hitman, or rather the one found to have pulled the trigger of the gun which killed Annie Devani. Also, today we expect the state's 17th witness to take the stand, and it's largely, at this point we can conclude that the state is nearing the end of its evidence, the end of its case against Shrien Devani on trial here for his wife's murder at the Western Cape High Court. Now, joining me, like you said earlier, is private forensic consultant Dr. David Klatzo, just to talk us through his view of what we've seen coming out of this trial thus far. Good morning to you, Doctor. We've spoken earlier on about just your view of the case the state has brought against Shrien Devani, what you know of this case, and also when we look at the forensic evidence presented in this case. Just in a nutshell, your view, has the state done enough to secure a conviction?
Well, that is, of course, going to be the decision of the judge and nobody else but the judge. But the forensic evidence, as it has been led to date, has been characterized primarily by its lackluster nature. It's been appalling. Number one, the evidence should have been around and available at the trial of the other accomplices. Number two, this accused, Mr. Devani, should never have been allowed to leave the country. There was always a great deal of suspicion relating to the murder, and the police failure to do even the most elementary investigation at those early stages has prejudiced this case, and not only that, has prejudiced the cases against the other three accused. The fact that they're having to try and reconstruct the evidence from a Volkswagen, which is not in the same seating situation as previously, the configuration is different. All of this points to a failure to have any kind of insight into what was needed and what should have been done at the time.
Now, a lot of the evidence the state wanted to present in this trial, specifically relating to the sexuality of Mr. Devani, a witness from abroad was not allowed to testify to that. When we look at it in its entirety, how important would this have been at the end of the day, seeing that we have accomplices who've admitted to their roles in the killing and the actual shooting of Annie Devani, when it comes to the state proving beyond reasonable doubt that this was a hit, that Mr. Devani was indeed the mastermind behind this murder. Is there sufficient evidence that you've seen at this point?
Well, I'm not in a position to comment on that for the simple reason that I haven't witnessed the entire trial. I haven't witnessed all the nuances of the evidence, but I would have thought that Mr. Devani's sexuality and the fact that he was openly gay on these things may well have played a role in determining motive. I am therefore somewhat astounded that Judge Traverso kept it out. Maybe the salacious nature of the evidence had more prejudicial value than the actual probative value. Because remember that Devani, in his plea explanation, admitted to being bisexual. So it may well be that Traverso J wanted to keep this evidence out because it would have little probative evidence, quite in addition to the evidence that he's already given in his plea explanation, and that it may well have been prejudicial rather than informative.
Now, we do expect the state to wrap up its case this week, if not today, in this murder trial. Just from what you know, do you think it's likely that the defence would call witnesses and even put Mr. Devani in the witness stand himself?
Well, I fully expect for Mr. Van Zyl to apply for a discharge at the end of the state case. Whether the judge gives him that discharge or not remains to be seen. But it will be of no doubt that if she doesn't give that discharge, Mr. Devani may well have to give evidence. And I'm not sure who the state would call to rebut the evidence, because there seems to be so little evidence at the moment. But we wait and we see.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Klatzo, private forensic consultant, just talking to us about his expectations happening or when the trial resumes here at 10 o'clock in the Western Cape High Court.
Thank you very much, Vanessa Puna, right outside the Western Cape High Court. Court only gets underway at 10 o'clock in Cape Town on a Monday morning. What a nice time to start your day's work. I wish I was a judge. Anyhow, let's go for our final segment today. Soweto Fashion Week, causing quite a stir. Katrine Milan has the details.
Well, yes, Soweto Fashion Week has been named one of the top 10 events and attractions to be visited in Johannesburg during the spring to summer season by Joburg Tourism. Other events include the Taste of Joburg, the Sansui Cup, the Whiskey Festival, and many more. Soweto Fashion Week is a platform, brand, and label established in 2011 for upcoming and already established designers in South Africa, with the aim of introducing a change in the face of modelling and Fashion Week runways in the country. Today, we are joined by Stephen Manzini, Soweto Fashion Week founder and director, and then Debbie Alorto, marketing manager of Darling Hair, South Africa. Welcome to Newsroom, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Stephen, top 10, how does it feel?
Well, it feels great. Well, a lot of effort was put into building the brand. It was a team effort. I cannot say it was an individual effort. However, you know, it's to us we see it as a miracle because with what we're ranked up in line with is these events have been around for over 10, 20 years, and then we like the new kids on the block and we're put in there. That's, for us, it's really great.
It's a brand that was established 3 years ago. How has it grown since the day you guys started? And are you achieving what you've always dreamed of achieving?
Yes, I mean, of course, when you want to achieve something, you always have bigger aspirations, but we are not complaining at all. I mean, the brand is really growing very fast, and some of the things that we're actually doing now is something we never thought would actually end up doing at this time.
I understand for the last year you have been working closely with Darling Hair, South Africa. Can you just tell us a bit more, Debbie, about the collaboration you have with Soweto Fashion Week?
Yeah, Katrine, we have been so pleased with the involvement with Soweto Fashion Week. It's been a journey which we're so chuffed to have been part of with Stephen. I think that it evolves every year. We see changes and we see developments which are fantastic to be a part of. And as the brand, you know, a big part of why we've joined with Stephen is the upliftment, the development of talent, entrepreneurship, and for that, you know, that's so important for us as a brand in the hair industry. It's a dynamic industry, it's an exciting industry, and it is ever growing. And for us to be part of that industry and then hooking on to Soweto Fashion Week is a marvel. We're loving it.
Can you tell us a bit more about the hair industry in South Africa? We don't often hear about it. How do we compare with the rest of the world?
The hair industry internationally is massive. You know, the USA probably leads the markets in hair, and South Africa, we're big. It's a very, very big industry, and I think what's exciting for the industry is that it's not a saturated industry. There's opportunity in this hair industry that is great and offers something to stylists and to industry that's not a lot of other industries can offer. And as a brand, we're a pan-African brand, Darling. We're present in 16 countries across Africa, South Africa being one of the top 3 in Africa. And to be part of a brand like that, which offers opportunity and solutions, you know, for a woman's beauty, it's important within the fashion industry, and it's great to be a part of that.
Now, Soweto Fashion Week is coming up now. Exactly, can you just give us the dates and the details?
From the 26th to 29th of November, which is next week actually. Tickets are available at Soweto Theatre. It's www.sowetotheatre.com, or you can go on our website, www.sowetofashionweek.com, and get yourself tickets. It depends on which show you want to attend. However, we've got designers from all across Africa coming through to join our Soweto designers, so I think it's really great.
You guys are the newcomers on the block, and it's massive opportunity. I understand there is a massive opportunity also for aspiring hairstylists this year. If one of you can just tell me about that.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I'll take that one. We've run a competition. It's called You Could Be the One, and it offers opportunities to aspiring and upcoming hairstylists in the Soweto region to become part of the Darling styling team, the hairstyling team at the actual event. So anybody can enter if you're a stylist in Soweto, and we've kept it to the Soweto region because that's where we're showcasing. And they need to submit a portfolio of styles to us. The competition closes on Friday. The details are available on our Facebook page. It's Darling South Africa. There is an insert there which gives details of how to enter and how to be part of it. So great opportunities and exciting times.
Well, Stephen and Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us all about Soweto Fashion Week coming up, one of the top 10 events and attractions to be visited this summer-spring collection. We'll be uploading all those details to our Newsroom Facebook page as well. You can get it all there. Well, Evan, close us off.
Thank you very much, Katrine. This is where we say goodbye. Another great show. Monday morning. Newsroom, of course, is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube at that time with a whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
Do you think that the media has then fully unpacked of what these strikes could possibly do to the economy if it's going to that extent of a recession?
It doesn't mean that when we solve the mining strike that suddenly the GDP is going to go and increase and we're all going to go and have an economic boom.
True,
so
yes.
we've got to go and look at that fact as well.
Obviously, the media, can't touch on absolutely everything. It is a very complicated situation.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Healthy food is not always the cheapest food option. And so making the healthy choices, the easier choices, remain a health challenge for South African children.
Bipolar disorder is said to affect 1 in 100 people.
Low back pain, the most common spinal disorder, affects about 8 out of 10 people at some point in their lives.
Back pain persists for more than a week or two. Seek advice.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC.
Zolega Mandela is one of the Mandela granddaughters. Raised by her grandmother Winnie Mandela, born to Zinzi Mandela, she had a life that she now uses as a tale to change the lives of others.
I grew up with my brother, who was 3 years younger than me. At that time, being born into my family and in that era, I grew up with in a household my grandmother used to call a transit camp, because we lived with a lot of men and women who were affiliated to the struggle. So there was a lot going on.
Zolega Mandela went through more than one can think of. Growing up closely with a brother in Swaziland, she had a childhood that seemed normal from the outside look.
When I moved from living with my aunt in Swaziland, because my parents were also very young and involved with the struggle, I then was moved to exile where my grandmother was. And one of my fondest memories was she used to sell acha in yellow buckets to the community. And I used to sit in the kitchen and literally eat acha from the bucket.